Thank you for tuning in to the Shikama Live Show with your host, Shikama. So, the G8 leaders have kicked out Russia from the G8, making it the G7. Before I get into this, let me once again go over a little bit of history in case people have not seen my other Crimea video. Crimea has belonged to Russia for centuries. Let me repeat that. Crimea is right next to Russia. It is not the U.S. versus the Panama Canal. It is the U.S. versus Baja California, which is not technically in the United States, right? It is just that close. It's not even the U.S. continental states versus Alaska. Even that's further away than Crimea is to Russia. So a lot of people think Crimea is located in some astronomically far place away from Russia. No, it is not. You can see each other standing on the docks of Russia and Crimea. The people of Crimea asked Putin and Russia to come take control of Crimea. Obama and friends and the European powers keep acting like Russia invaded Crimea. No, they did not invade. They sent troops in to secure Crimea, meaning Crimea said, come over here and let us be brothers once more. Send somebody to protect us from Ukraine. The Ukraine is filled with corrupt oligarchs. So when Crimea invited Russia in, Russia sent in troops to secure the borders of Crimea. They're not shooting people in Crimea. They're not beating people in Crimea. And everybody in Crimea, everybody speaks Russian. They are Russian. Their ancestry is Russian. They are Russian. Okay, do you get that part? Now, moving on. Eastern Ukraine is filled with Russians. The Ukraine is a staunch ally of Russia. What actually happened? We sent in the CIA to overthrow the legitimate government of the Ukraine. We did that. The CIA overthrew the duly elected in the most fair election that could possibly ever be seen. That includes U.S. elections in that category. Yes, our elections are not fair. They are not above board. We suspect that the U.S. government and the powers that be have corrupted the U.S. vote for many presidencies. Now, let's get on to this. Just so you have that history, just so you know that reporters are going to be talking about stuff and coaching it in ways that are completely erroneous. And I don't just mean erroneous. I mean, it's an out and out lie. Putin did not invade Crimea. You got that part? President Barack Obama and other world leaders have decided to end Russia's role in the group of leading industrialized nations, the White House said Monday. The move to suspend Russia's membership in the G8 is the latest direct response from major countries allied against Russia's annexation of Crimea. They are targeting Russia. What are they targeting Russia for? And I bet you it's not even that. Let's get into that the theory, the conspiracy theory just for a second. I guarantee you it's not the G8 countries. I guarantee you. It is the people behind the people behind the people that are doing this. And what are they doing? Are they trying to destroy Russia? No, they're trying to make money. They're trying to set up World War III. They keep trying and then keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. What was Syria? What was Iraq supposed to be? What was Afghanistan supposed to be? Now they're targeting Iran, and Russia stepped in and said, no, we're not a part of that. Nope. Don't come to Iran. They are trying. They keep trying. International law prohibits the acquisition of part or all of another state's territory through coercion or force, which is a complete lie because Crimea belonged to Russia. It was Stalin that said, Crimea, you can go free. And the Crimeans were like, what do you mean we can go free? We're a part of Russia. We've always been a part of Russia. They thought he was crazy. They still think he's crazy. They still do not know why he did that. To do so violates the principles upon which the international system is built. We condemn the illegal referendum held in Crimea in violation of Ukraine's constitution. Ukraine had nothing to do with Crimea being annexed by Ukraine. Stalin let it go and Ukraine absorbed it. How about them apples? Ukraine is trying to claim control over something that they had absolutely no control over to begin with. We also strongly condemn Russia's illegal attempt to annex Crimea in contravention of international law and specific international obligations. Russia Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov said earlier in the day that being kicked out of G8 would be no big deal. How about them apples? G8 is an informal organization that does not give out any membership cards and, by its definition, cannot remove anyone, he said during a news conference. All the economic and financial questions are decided in G20, and G8 has the purpose of existing as the forum of dialogue between the leading Western countries and Russia. Lavrov added that Russia was not attached to this format, and we don't see a great misfortune if it will not gather. Maybe for a year or two, it will be an experiment for us to see how we live without it. In a nod to political and economic reforms, the United States, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Japan, and Italy added Russia to their group in 1998, transforming it from the G7 to the G8. An aide to British Prime Minister David Cameron confirmed to CNN that a group summit initially planned for June in Sochi, Russia, that where the Winter Olympics were held, is now off. Oh, the United States and its allies. So literally they're cutting off the nose to spite their face. The United States and its allies in Europe are united in imposing a cost on Russia for its actions so far. So let me explain this. The G8 is the meeting. Hi, how you doing? You've been provided with a continental breakfast. There's no briefcases brought. There's no trade agreement signed. Nothing really happens there. The G20 is where stuff happens. So this is posturing. This is simply posturing. They're trying to do something and appear all tough when actually they're not. It's literally like not inviting you to the pre-party of the party or the pre-party of the ballet. You're still going to the ballet. You still have your box seats. They just didn't invite you to the pre-party where they serve coffee and introduce you to the actors whom you already know by this point. Western powers have imposed sanctions and other penalties against specific people in Russia close to President Vladimir Putin. A senior Obama administration official not speaking for full attribution said Obama and other leaders agreed that further steps to punish Russia, President Vladimir Putin, could include sanctions on energy, banking, and defense sectors, all areas where Europe is deeply engaged economically with Russia. So let's get this straight. If they impose energy sanctions, banking sanctions, and defense sanctions against Russia, Europe would topple. Literally, we're talking about Europe, the what they have going now, the whole market of Europe, the way of life in Europe would cease to exist in its present form. It would literally be Armageddon just for Europe. The rest of the world would go on. In fact, Russia would go on. Sanctions would mean the death of Europe, not the death of Russia. Why? Because you have the BRICS countries. How about that one? NATO has expressed concern Russia could attempt to reclaim a region of Moldova with Russian sympathies. So this is another place that is inviting Russia to come in. Obama has said a military incursion in Ukraine is off the table, and his advisors are hesitant to even frame the crisis in Ukraine as a bad 80s flashback. Obama is in one corner, Putin in the other. It's not Rocky IV, as Secretary of State John Kerry said. White House officials don't care to publicly muse about Putin's intentions. National Security Advisor Susan Rice, the lovely Susan Rice, right? The evil and terribly misinformed Susan Rice, who said that Bergdorf served with honor and served with distinction. This is the same Susan Rice. Said the Russian president's actions speak for themselves. Oh, okay, they speak for themselves, but people are asking the question, what is he doing? Obviously, they don't speak for themselves. The White House emphasis throughout the Russian occupation of Crimea has been de-escalation. Asked whether the United States will provide military aid to Ukraine's woefully underfunded armed forces, administration officials cautioned that such assistance could inflame tensions. Our focus has been and remains on the economic and diplomatic instruments at this point, Rice said. Our interest is not seeing the situation escalate and devolve into hot conflict. Lavrov met with Kerry on Monday and said Russia's actions in Crimea was necessary. It was the necessity to protect Russians who live there and who live there for centuries. I just said that. Did I not just say that? I just said that. He said in the news conference, and when our partners compare Crimea to Kosovo, because in Kosovo a lot of blood was shed, then its independence was proclaimed. So we have a question then. Is it necessary for the blood to be shed in Crimea to agree on the right of the people in Crimea for self-determination? Remember, they have not shed blood. They just walked in and set up shop and secured the borders for the people who asked them to come in. While Democratic and Republican lawmakers in the United States are stepping up their calls to provide Ukraine with light arms and other military aid, please don't even go there. With an estimated 20,000 Russian troops in Ukraine's border, the question is whether Obama's use of soft power will deter Putin. What is he trying to deter? Putin has put all the military units he would need to move into Ukraine on its eastern borders and is doing exercises. We see him moving forces in the south in a position where they could take the southern region over to Moldova, Roger said on NBC's Meet the Press. There are other approaches. Obama's former ambassador to Russia, I'm sorry, was he the one killed? Oh no, that was in Benghazi. Michael McFaul urged the administration to intensify its policy of isolating Putin. Isolating him from who? Mr. Putin's Russia has no real allies. Are you insane? The BRICS countries, and Russia sits on top of the entire structure. Mr. Putin's Russia has no real allies. We must keep it that way, McFaul wrote in an op-ed in the New York Times. He's deluded. He's deluded, or he's trying to lie, or he's trying to use some sort of talking points. This is ridiculous. This entire thing is ridiculous. They're trying to make Putin out to be this evil guy. Oh, he's evil. Crimea asked him to come in. Point blank. That's a fact. Go look it up. Crimea is composed of Russians. That's a fact. Go look it up. Nobody was shot when the troops went into Crimea. That's a fact. Go look it up. Eastern Ukraine is filled with Russians also. Geographically, they're not located in some sort of distinct area, unlike Crimea, which was wholly distinct by itself. And it has been a part of Russia for centuries. They are trying to court World War III. That is what's going on. And why? For money. They're gonna lend money to the United States, lend money to Europe, lend money to Russia. The banks are behind this. That is the conspiracy. You agree? Disagree? Tell me what you think. And please like the video. I want a 50% like rating from everybody. Everybody, please try and like. I mean, it takes a click. Thank you for watching the Shikama Live Show.